Do you think there's any hope for somebody who's in a relationship with a narcissist? Let's say somebody's listening to this or they're watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, like I honestly think I might be in a relationship with a narcissist. Is there any conversation that can be had with this person? Can a narcissist change, or is the best way of survival to get out?
So it depends on the person. Doug, this is where it gets really complicated. And my approach to this has always been to have no agenda, to say, well, if you don't get out, then it's really going to always be a nightmare for you. It's not true, right? Healing's an inside game, right? It's something we can take responsibility for in ourselves, even if we're in a mess. That healing is possible even when getting out is not, is what I tell folks. There's a lot of reasons people feel they can't get out of these relationships. There's the complex trauma bonded dynamics, but there's also they still love the person for how difficult it's been. They still feel a sense of love. They feel a sense of loyalty. They have a sense of fear of, if I leave this, what if they turn around and become a nice person for the next person? Or there's still some stuff I like here. I don't want to be alone. There is practical factors. Practical factors could be money, a shared home. You might have kids together. And then there's cultural and religious factors. People feeling like, especially if they're married, they feel like, okay, I can't split up with this person. I'm in it with them, whatever it may be. No reason is a wrong reason. There's no judgment or shame around the reasons. Your reasons are yours and they're real. And I think this idea of like, oh, that's just because you're lame and you're a doormat. There are no doormats. These things do such a number on you. And if you still feel love for a person, you still feel love for a person. No one else gets to tell you you don't. So what the hope then becomes, and it's all to me predicated on radical acceptance. You got to see this thing for what it is and know it's not going to change. And what tiny bit it changes, it ain't going to be enough to make this a healthy relationship, right? And so I can put, listen, I could put crown molding in my house. Don't make it a mansion. All right, makes it a house with crown molding. And they might change a little bit. It doesn't make them into an empathic, warm, loving kind of a person. And so not the way somebody needs. Now, some people will say, listen, this fool went to therapy and they don't scream as much and it's still not deep. And I have to radically accept that's not what I'm getting in my life. But radical acceptance is that this person's not going to change, or it's not going to change enough. The relationship's not going to change. The patterns in the relationship aren't going to change. And that this is going to be hard and it will still hurt even if they say things to you. So, but over time, some people say, you know what? We live in parallel here. We just shot a video today about this idea that some people are fully mentally out, but they're physically in. Is it optimal? I mean, who's to argue, right? They'll say there's reasons I'm staying in this. If they left tomorrow, I'd be thrilled, but I can't be the one who pushes the accelerator on that. And I'll tell you, there's people who quote unquote get out of narcissistic relationships, but they're mentally still in. It's almost like being a dry drunk, right? They're still mentally in the game. And so they're scanning and social media and who are they with and what are they up to? Some people are in the relationship like, I don't give a damn what happens to this person. I'm out. So radical acceptance is really a key, but it also fills people with grief. They're like, I love this person. I thought we were going to grow old together. I thought this, I thought that. Having to give up on all that is hard. Now, for the people who leave, it's a different path forward, and it ain't all rainbows and moonbeams. In some cases, narcissistic people don't like to be left. Let's call it that straight. They do not. They have high rejection sensitivity. So if somebody leaves them, there will be hell to pay. So there might be what we call post-separation abuse. The narcissistic person may stalk them on social media or even literally. The narcissistic person may pass rumors about them. They might do what we call a smear campaign. They may enlist what are called flying monkeys. They talk smack about the person who broke up with them to anyone who will listen. And some of those people will start to believe it. So you'll feel like your entire support system crumbled overnight. So these things happen where you think like, I was just trying to break up for them, but now my whole life is kind of a mess. And so people will sometimes feel as though, what have I done? This is worse now. Some people will break up and feel a sense of regret. So when the narcissistic person hoovers them back in, they're vulnerable to it. And so it's a complex landscape, even if people leave. In the grand scheme of things, Doug, if someone could leave and be narcissist free or get rid of this person and really do the work of themselves, they will feel better. But people can heal while they're in these relationships. I've seen it happen. It happens all the time. I always say it's like you're still walking, but now there's a bit of a slope on the walk, but it can be done.
It's not the same, but there's similarities between this type of relationship dynamic and then being in a relationship with somebody who's an addict, right? Where you have to gain this radical acceptance. Like you said, you have to take care of yourself. You can't let the relationship destroy you. You can't create this, false idea of what the relationship could be. Like, you have to accept it for what it is. And if things get better, awesome. But if not, like, you have to accept, like, it's not your fault. And I've seen people completely self-sabotage in when they're in relationships with somebody who's an addict, and it ends up impacting their own mental health, their own life. And the same thing I would imagine happens in a narcissistic relationship, and probably I would imagine it's more severe. How can somebody prevent that? Like, if they've gained radical acceptance of the situation, what are some things that they should be doing on a daily basis, weekly basis? Again, I know you're not about like this one size fits all approach, but generally speaking, what can people do to make sure that they're not sacrificing their mental health?
So once a person hits radical acceptance, and listen, not everyone has access to therapy, but if you do, be in it, and ideally with a therapist who gets this stuff. Because just simply having that validating space with somebody who's a trained ear can make a huge difference. And you also want to be shoring up your other social supports. Something that makes us very gaslightable is if in all the relationships we're in, our reality is being denied or twisted, and we're being told there's something wrong. It's all our relationships are destabilizing. That makes it tricky. But if you have validating spaces in your life, for example, a strong friendship network or trusted colleagues, just continuing to cultivate that, because the narcissistic relationship is like a black hole. It sucks all of you into it, all your resource, all your bandwidth, all your thoughts, feelings, everything. If you can, radical acceptance means thinking, I'm no longer bringing my A game to this relationship, right? I'm going to have to cultivate these other spaces in my life because these people see me, I see them. It's a mutual and reciprocal relationship. You get to experience that two-way road that is a relationship. Again, like I said, being in therapy is also a big one. The other thing is practicing realistic expectations. Radical acceptance and realistic expectations sort of go together hand in hand, in the sense that the radical acceptance sort of navigates the realistic expectations, where it's sort of things like the person who is about to have their birthday and things, they know that the narcissistic person, it's hit or miss if they're going to celebrate it right. If this matters to you that much, set something up with your friends. It could be a lunch, it could be a dinner. Like, you need to do you. I say to people, I'm never going to be able to take away the hurt while you're in this relationship, but I would like to take away the surprise. And I have clients who week over week will say, "You're not going to believe what he did." And I look at them, I'm like, I absolutely believe what he did. This, I would have set a clock that this is what he would have done. And we'll even play a game because they'll say, I'm going to be doing this and this when I see my mother or narcissistic mother, narcissistic partner. I say, here's how it's going to go down. I'll make a bet with you. I won't bet stuff like a coffee or like Starbucks or something. I'll say, I'm right. You buy me Starbucks. I'm wrong. I buy it for you. I got nothing but Starbucks gift cards in my house because I am always right about this. And it's not that I'm some kind of damn genius. And I want to lift a surprise. But the more we play that game, they're like, I saw it and I didn't react to it this time. Because the surprise leaves you feeling worn down and let down. You're like, I can't believe he did it, versus it's more of like, here we go. That's a very different nervous system stance. Another other thing is also to learn your nervous system. We might be fighters, we might be flighters, we might be freezers, we might be submitters, we might be fawners. Know your sort of nervous system repertoire. How do you respond to those threats? Because those often predominate. Some people feel shame, like, why didn't I say something? Their freeze response kicked in. And it's learning that self-compassion of, you were trying to keep yourself safe in what felt like a threat. It is about bringing self-compassion to yourself. But doing these things sort of all together, engaging differently. You might say, well, that's not a relationship anymore. I don't disagree, but some people don't have a choice. But now it clears out a space for them to at least not be pummeled all the time psychologically.
I imagine like one of the other challenges of staying in a relationship with a narcissist is dealing with conflict. And like, you can do the nervous system work, you can talk to a therapist, and that all I'm sure helps tremendously. But how does somebody deal with like conflict when you're saying like a big part of how the relationships erupt with a narcissist is how the narcissist responds to stress and turmoil in their life? What advice do you have there?
It's a tough one, right? Because you're never going to be able to have any reasonable conflict with them, right? There's no such thing as having an argument with a narcissistic person. You're either going to be gaslighted, you're going to be overwhelmed, you're going to be bulldozed, or you're going to be left. That's the entire vocabulary of conflict. So it is really about a disengagement. As they go on and on. It's almost like there's a concept I have in my new book. I call it soul distancing. So while they're yammering on, you're almost like envisioning, like, okay, my body is present, my soul is over here, I got it protected. I'm not engaging with this. And they're going to yell and scream and yell and scream. Listen, different people's nervous systems can put up with this in different ways. But when a person's gaslighting you, the best you can say is like, listen, we're having different experiences here. I mean, that's all I got. It's going to make them more frothed up, but that's much better than you doubting yourself. Just, you are having a different experience. I thought you remembered it this way. I remembered it that way. That's it. That's a different experience. And so there are phrases you can have that can help sort of, at least on your side, put your punctuation mark on it. They're not going to let it go though. They're fighters. They're built for the fight. And if you're not a fighter, this is a really, really bumpy road. The other thing, though, is they don't just fight. The other thing narcissistic people do is they withhold and they withdraw. And for people who have abandonment fears, that can be really, really hard. When this silent treatment is a very, very common tactic in narcissistic relationships. By the way, all narcissistic people gaslight. Not all gaslighters are narcissistic. They may just be people who are just obsessed with power, and that's their thing, which probably makes them narcissistic-y, but we wouldn't know until we sort of peered under the hood. So that's what gaslighting is. And many times as gaslighting proceeds, many times the gaslighter will literally twist it to a place where they're the victim and you're the perpetrator, and you're thinking, and people believe it. Like, I'm a bad person. And that's why many people in narcissistic relationships feel like they're bad people.